Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thought Leadership Podcast and live show. And today I have the honor and pleasure to have Azul that I met for a couple of years ago. We were both speakers in an event, and Azul Terronez is an amazing person, go-to person when it comes to publishing your book. So welcome to the show, Azul. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Daria. I'm privileged.
Oh, my pleasure. So, since we met, you have created this magnificent brand that calls Authors Who Lead. Can you tell a bit more about it?
Right. So I've been helping authors publish books for several years, but what I realized is the niche authors who lead is focused on leaders,
Yeah.
thought leaders, entrepreneurs, course makers, speakers, kind of get clear about what's their message. So we help train authors to get clear about what their book's about and why it's important to be clear on their message to their audience. So our focus is leaders because those are the people we think have the most impact. Our
Yeah.
goal is to impact 1 million people through the authors we help. And we have a motto that we believe in people over paper always, because it's not about the book. It's about the person we're curating. It's about the leader we're developing. The book is just a reflection of that. So when we started working with people like Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income to help write his book, or Jada Sellner from Simple Green Smoothies, they're leaders, but they also know that they have to grow into a new area of expertise, or at least capture their expertise. And so that's really what we designed this program for, is specifically for people who are thought leaders in their community.
Amazing. And this is why I'm so happy to have you on the show, because our audience, most of the ones listening and watching, are established speakers, coaches, consultant leaders. And it's not only about writing the book, it's actually writing the book. And I think that, I'm just going to give an example. When I published my book in 2018, I published the book in the end of an era where I've been working with the creative industry. And by the time I finished that in 14 months in, and I felt good about the book, I was so tired of the topic that I felt that I cannot speak about it. And then I got all these opportunities coming my way. So I knew that somehow, yes, it became a gift to the creative industry, and it's used in several universities today, and I'm very grateful for the impact it made. But I did felt that it was an end of something, and if I would have had help of someone like you to actually reflect on where am I going with this, where is my purpose, and actually reflect not as an end of this is my end expertise book, but actually this is the beginning of something new, I believe that my book would have been something much more aligned with my mission today. Is this something that happens often, or am I just doing something on the other right?
No, absolutely, that happens. In fact, one of my current clients, she's written several books, but it was a book about how to use um, platforms like Kickstarter to help grow your platform. So she became the Kickstarter queen, which was awesome at the time, until she didn't want to be the Kickstarter queen. And she's
Yes.
like, "Oh no, I don't want to hear about Kickstarter. I don't want to hear about platforms that do these fundraising things." And yet here was a book, and she constantly still gets emails and
Yes.
messages about it. So what I tell people is, like, when you write a book that's focused on content, it's really useful. I call those transactional books. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with writing a book about the 101 ways to make money on YouTube. Nothing wrong with that. But it is very transactional. It's very niche down.
Yeah.
We help leaders write transformational books. What that means is, most people think that the book is about the content. Seems logical that it should be, right? I'm an expert. I have content. I should put my content in a book. Well, kind of like you had an expertise and you put it in a book. Well, content's actually very available to anywhere, right? You
Yes.
can Google it and you can search it and get it for free on YouTube. We're not needing more content. And that's
No.
the ironic thing. What we're needing is more inspiration. We're needing someone to tell us why it matters. And if
Yes.
you think about content like sunshine, it's everywhere. So it's hard to say my sunshine's better than your sunshine. It's the same sunshine. I'm just
Yeah.
packaging it a little nicer by drawing a circle on the ground, say, look at my sunshine.
Yeah.
And after a while, it gets hard to sell sunshine. But when I was a kid, I got a magnifying glass in a science kit that you can look at things up close, which is really great.
Yeah.
But the great thing was that I figured out I could use it to burn my friend's leg. You could
Yeah.
use it
Yeah. Yeah.
focusing, or you can
Yeah.
light a leaf on fire, or even burn an ant, which is not good. I know I owe some karma for that. But the thing about it is what's ordinary sunlight that just warms your hand can be transformed through that magnifying glass. like hyper focus. But
Yes.
most authors think that the thing they're trying to hyper focus is the content. You're not focusing the content. You're the lens. You're the magnifying glass. You're the thing that makes that sunshine focus and ignite. So stop worrying about what you're writing about. Worry about who are you in this space? Why are you the unique messenger here? Because if you don't, you're going to write a book that later on you're like, oh, I don't want to be that person anymore. And that's kind of what's
Yes.
happened to you and many writers. So if you write a book that gives your unique perspective and values, no matter what industry you're in, your values will translate, right? So you'll
Yes.
translate out of your industry into a new one because of your unique perspective. And that's the thing I help leaders do is realize, why are you the important person first? Don't focus on the content, focus on you. And that's what we do. We help leaders understand that power of their own message.
Azul, 5 minutes in, and you're just dropping this amazing, light, inspirational bombs. I say, oh, yes, yes, because what I usually talk about is identity upgrades as we grow with, if you're an expert, if you're a speaker or author, it doesn't really matter, leader. The pace in which you grow out of your skin is just insane because you're growing so fast. You're always, if you're someone who's curious, you're developing yourself and you're realizing what was, actually the most important things you were teaching or coaching in 6 months ago is almost outdated already because you realize that there's
Right.
something even bigger. But if you instead focus on those values, about your stories, about your journey, about who you are, that isn't going to change so much. You're still going to be the same person. I'm still the same person who wrote that book, in 2018. The concept, the frameworks are not the same, but I'm still the same person. And someone who met me 3 years ago will say, well, you're still the same person, hopefully. So
Yeah.
so much, this is so beautiful because it makes so much sense. And this is where you can create a book that will actually stay with you and grow with you, and where you don't feel like you don't want to talk about, Kickstarter anymore or creative industry. You actually can live with that book. And it's a great, great lesson. So I would love to hear
Yeah.
a bit more about, I know that you approach it from different purposes that when you write the book. And I would like to go a bit deeper into the 3 different purposes so we can just understand a bit, if someone is listening or watching this and want to write a book or in the process of writing a book, how they
Yeah.
could align that book with the rest. Because we don't want your book just to be published and be on the bucket list and, put on the bookshelf, which is amazing, send to your
Yeah.
friends. But you want, if you're here for a bigger purpose and mission, and that's your legacy, this is what you're creating in your life, this is the most important thing you can give and share, then of course the book is part of that. It's not something that you put outside. It's part of your retreats, your coaching, your consulting, your experience. It's all in the same basket. So how do we
Right.
keep it in the same basket so it doesn't feel like we are losing it on the way? Let's talk about the first one. Niching down when it comes to writing a book. You remember
Right.
we had a small conversation about this. You mentioned that when you write a book, it can be good for your niche to niche down even more. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Let me give an example. So I had a author who's a pharmacist, and he was teaching other pharmacists how to get better jobs and wanted to write a book. Well, during the writing book, the process, he started to have a little bit of a panic. He called me. I said, I really need to talk to you. I said, well, what is it? He goes, during the writing of this book about helping pharmacists get better job, I've realized I don't want to be a pharmacist. I was like, well, that's a huge shift.
Yeah.
I said, well, let's talk about that. He says, well, I'm realizing I'm more inspired by helping pharmacists than being one. I said, okay, good. We're still in the right lane. So what we did is we just focused on, let's help pharmacists become very successful and happy in their job, because the pharmacist rate of suicide is actually one of the highest professional suicide rates,
I didn't
actually.
know that.
And yeah, suicide is really high because their job is really difficult. They're high demand and they don't have very good working conditions. And there's a flood of pharmacists. So getting a new job seems daunting. So we said, let's find out what about you made you the go-to person in pharmacy. And he wrote a book called Indispensable: How to Have a Successful Pharmacy Career. And what he realized is that most pharmacists were never trained on how to be unique, how to stand out, how to be more than their job description, more than their credentials. A book called Dispensable is a play on the words dispensing medication, but indispensable could be used to speak to how do you become an indispensable chiropractor? How do you become an indispensable healthcare provider? It's this idea that's powerful. Like
Yes.
indispensable means there's no one better than me. Like I'm unique and I stand out. So that's it's niche down to his audience, but it also is relatable outside of his audience. So niching down in this case helped pharmacists get better at getting more fulfilling jobs, but also allows him to be the expert in the field of job satisfaction. He could speak in HR groups. He could talk to universities. So niching down actually served him in a better way, even though he was leaving the pharmacy career. Now he runs a very successful multi six figure business helping pharmacists and runs a job board for pharmacists. But that niching down is what really helped him get clear about how he can serve in his own way.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like it comes back to identity again, right? It's that idea of who am I if I'm a happy pharmacist? Who am I and how do I show up in my profession? How do I feel about myself? My mindset, my routines. How do I approach my profession? And this is something that can stay for many years, in maybe in 10 years time, even if the whole industry changes, there's gonna be golden nuggets in that book that we can relate to.
Right,
So
right, because
it's
it's about that person's their indispensable qualities within them, not what's going on in the industry. It's from inside out, and that's not why they focus in that particular profession.
Yes. And as you mentioned, what it allowed him to do is to be able to, really go for what he wanted in the industry, training pharmacists, coming into an organization. So the book is not limiting him, the book is actually supporting and giving him space to grow within, because he probably at that moment when he wrote the book had an idea and a mission, but might not have known exactly how that would look like. So it would be harder to, go into the information, like you mentioned before, and actually teach and, come up with, frameworks. Whereas here, it's broad enough and but at the same time niche down to give him the space to grow within.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And give his reason why it wasn't the 5 steps to get a better job. It was how to live indispensably, how to be that unique person that draws the right job to you as opposed to a step-by-step guide, which is why branding your book is so important. Because that indispensable is a pretty good brand on its own.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. So that is when it comes to niching down. What if you want to broaden? Let's say that you
Mm.
already have a niche, but you want to broaden and you want to be able to tap into other type of industries with your brand.
Yeah. So I have a client, her name's Abby Metcalf. She is the go-to relationship therapist. Um, Dr. Metcalf, her niche is counseling for couples. Very niche. She's one of the highest paid couples counselors in the San Francisco area. And she believes she can change the world one relationship at a time. She said, if everybody had fulfilling relationships, the world would be different. Well, then
Mm,
the niche, that's kind of niche down. Like that's so
yeah.
niche. She's like, well, I want to start speaking to corporations. And she's spoken at Google and she's spoken at large companies, but she's writing a book about, I'll tell you about her first book. Her first book was How to Be Happily Married, Even If Your Partner Won't Do a Thing, which I thought's really fun and interesting.
Yeah.
But she wants us to, it's really hard to use a book like that to talk to corporate life.
Yes.
So she's now writing a book about the business of relationships and how all companies should be worried about their interpersonal relationships, especially as you go up the ladder. Those relationships can't be ignored. So she wants to start speaking to, CEOs, corporations about what's going wrong in their relationships at the top level so that she could niche down. So she's using her expertise, but expanding it into the business of relationships. And now her expertise is transferring beautifully because relationships are a major problem in the top of the
Yeah.
of the marketing ladder, this food chain of leaders. So now she's pivoting from a really small tight niche into a really broad one where she can speak at any corporation and company she wants because everybody has relationship problems in their company.
Yes. Absolutely. And that could be any industry. So she went from, the the couples and working on that to going to the corporate, but that could be health, it could be business development, it could be so many other parts where we can go from the small to the big. And sometimes it's just hard to see and just to imagine that you're actually a part of a bigger ecosystem. And even if you are in that field of, we can get into tunnel vision where we're working for many years in the same industry, but realizing that I'm not alone and there are other people who could benefit from this that I have not even thought about. Because the relationship, it can be in kindergarten, it can be in the pharmacies, it can be when you're traveling, it can be so many different reasons, online when you are in the virtual world. And that you can take the same concept and most probably the frameworks and translate it to the new industry is amazing. Do you have any
Yeah.
creative exercises to help them broaden their niches? If you think about it, there's something you do that helps them to see bigger.
Yeah. So I do activities with my authors that gets them to remember who they are. I know that seems ironic, but most people don't think about their journey very often, how they got where they are. And most people don't. They think of their resume sometimes, but they don't think of, well, why am I special? Why am I unique? And so I do an exercise called the Lifeline where I say, I want you to show me on a chart your life. I want you to talk about the highs and lows in your life, starting from your earliest memory until till now. And I know it seems strange I'm asking you to do this, but the reason is there are patterns in your life that have made you who you are, and they started very young. And if you can capitalize on that unique quality, why you're unique, you understand that why you're the one who's, even though there's another person in your field, why you're the one who has an even more unique message than they do, because you're
Yes.
capitalizing on that uniqueness. So, for example, sometimes I'll have my person do that. And what we find in their life is that their their really high moments and their really low moments are not that far apart, but they're falling so far from their high to the low, or they're climbing so hard to get somewhere, they don't notice who they've become in between. Well, that
Mm,
unique quality is what makes them unique, right? My friend and speaker, thought leader, she's the co-founder of Simple Green Smoothies. She started with no education, college education, having her child on her hip, building an Instagram from 0 to 400,000, and building this multi 7-figure business called Simple Green Smoothies by her ability to serve people and care for people and nurture people. And that's a quality she's always had. And
mm,
so we're working on a book now to talk about, well, how do you cultivate that in business? How do you
yes.
not lose the opportunity to lead with love? And so we worked on a manuscript for a year, and her unique quality is that she's always been this way. And so in the world today, we need more people focusing on love and business and not separating them. And she just got a multi 6-figure book deal based on that book idea. So what you're doing is, what's your unique quality? That's important. So the exercise of looking at the length of your life and realizing there's so many unique things, and you've been doing things this way for a reason, and that's what makes you
Yes.
unique. Some people just forget. They think somehow that it's a skill. It's not a skill, it's a personality trait, it's a value that comes up, and that's what's important for you. And so each person that realizes that, their message grows stronger and stronger and outshines anybody who might quote be more advanced, because people remember that story, they remember that connection, and they understand why you're the person they should follow.
It's amazing. And yes, it's like you're saying that we have from childhood, we do things we that is so unique to us that we don't even think about. And what comes to my mind is a story I tell sometimes. So Sebastian and I, my co-founder and partner, we've been doing this for 11 years. And one of the core things we do is facilitation. We are obsessed with group dynamics, group psychology, how do co-elevation, how do people support each other inside our members club, inside of community. And when I think back, when I was 6, 7 years old, when people come to my birthday parties, the best moment for me was when they were having fun. So I remember myself standing outside and just watching them, and just from far away, standing there watching them and being so grateful and happy that they were having fun, not even being part of the group. And that skill is something that I have had with me, because my biggest joy is when my members collaborate, My
Mm,
biggest joy is when they support each other within our tribe, and when they are, helping each other, referrals, and they're working together, and then working together on this podcast, or maybe the creative offer together. That's my biggest joy, when we facilitate in group and I just see how the group is taking over and it has its own life. And that is the same thing that was happening in the birthday party when I was 7. It hasn't
hmm.
changed. It's just that it's the same thing that's coming back over and over again. And now it's maybe 70 people or 100 people that we are, having in this
Right.
birthday party, having in this the best time of their life. But the joy that brings me, it's the same one.
Right. That's a great example, Daria. That's what I'm talking about. Is those fundamentals of who you are. You should really utilize them and actually understand why it's so important.
Yeah.
For me, I'm dyslexic. I struggle with reading. I couldn't read even at 3rd grade. So by 9 years old, still not being able to read was really challenging. I flunked freshman English at UCLA at a university, had to take it again. But what the superpower for me was, while all my peers were working hard to focus on the words, because that was not easy for me, I focused on the message. I focused on the people. And I started to see inside of things and wonder, well, why is it this way? And they're worrying about, organizing the words and grammar. So my superpower is I see people's messages more clearly than the words. The words to me get in the way. I was like, okay, the
Oh,
words are the thing that you're trying to put on paper, but that's not the thing. You're the thing. So I focus
yes.
on the people and see them more clearly. Well, what was a very difficult, detrimental thing as a teacher, as a school teacher as well, was now a superpower. So I help people see things that words don't describe. And that's brilliant because other people use language and I use intuition. I use a depth of understanding that's subconscious, below the surface. So that's the kind of stuff you want to utilize, not shy
Yes.
from. I would have never thought of that if I hadn't done my own exercise to realize, you know what, this is actually really a gift. I should pay more attention to this gift as opposed to think it's not that important. So I think people are missing out on opportunities here for doing an activity like this to see, well, where have I really been really lifted up, and where do I really struggle? Because sometimes your struggle can be your superpower too. Just like my
Yes.
my my
Yeah.
my struggle is the thing that makes me great.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And that idea that we are so unique and that business can be so intuitive, and most of the time we connect with stories. It sounds so simple, and we feel like we need to make it so complicated. We need to add all these
Mm,
things, and and some people are great at the mindy, the strategic, the wordy, and that's amazing. But I meet so many visionaries, and especially visionaries who are the creators, who are the speakers, and they love speaking, they love people, they are people person, they want to
mhm.
just sit with other people and connect, and then and serve. And for them to be stuck and creating landing pages, stuff of that can be completely um, make them feel less creative, make them feel less inspired.
Right,
What you're allowing them to do with the type of work that you're doing is to reconnect with, who am I? What's my passion? What's my purpose? Who am I in my core being? What's my superpowers? What's my struggles? And how can I utilize that for everything I create? And that
right.
becomes my, that beautiful line that no one else can have, because that's completely unique to you.
That's absolutely right.
Yes,
That's really
wonderful.
what it's about.
And so this is, if we talk about, for the one, if someone is just tuning into this episode, we talked about two different ways to approach your book already. One is going down to a niche, and if you're having a niche, how do you work with that niche when you're writing your message and your story? The second one we spoke about was to be going a bit broader. If you have a niche but you want to expand to different industries, or if you're going from B2C to B2B and you want to be able to create more opportunities in your business with your book. Now, I would love to talk about pivoting, which has been one of the buzzwords as we're
Right.
recording this, but is an important one. How do you pivot with a book?
Yeah. So the great thing about expertise is that you can borrow it in one industry and apply it to another. So I spent 25 years as a school teacher, a principal of schools. In the business world, that doesn't seem very valuable. In the school world, that's really useful. People actually admire that, but it doesn't seem useful. Well, I want it to be useful. So you can use skills from one area to another by taking the thing in that skill and applying it to here. So one of the book ideas that I have been working on recently is one of the things I learned about working with kids is they have these different rules. They have kids' rules where, let's take the example of a classroom. When you go into a classroom, and if you went to school, public school or something, you kind of relate, they have rules on the board. Here, you sit down, take out your pencil, don't talk, don't get up without permission. We have rules. That's adult rules, right? They have a specific purpose. Their job is to control and maintain order. Well, kids have rules too, and actually they love rules, but they don't use them like adults. Kids' rules are often seen in places where they have control, like the playground. So on the yard where they're playing games, if they're playing a game like Foursquare, which is a game where you bounce a ball from one square to the other with four people, if four people are playing, that works great. But if five more people show up, you need to invent rules. Well, to keep playing, we'll have you, when you get out, you rotate out, this person rotates in so everyone can play. Kids' rules are about keeping the game of play continuing, not prohibiting it, not limiting it. Adult rules are about limiting things. Kids use rules in a different way. Now, see, kind of a book like that can be applied to business.
Oh,
What
yeah.
rules have you applied that are adult rules that should be kids' rules? How can you think differently about collaboration and working in teams, right? See how I can transfer what I know from one industry into the next by just
Yes.
shifting my focus? That's what you
Yes.
can do with a book. A book, don't remove yourself from your expertise. Use that expertise to say, I think I can help your organization change the way they fundamentally build structures by reprogramming their brain from adult rules to kids rules.
Yes.
And that's it. That's
Brilliant.
that's the simplicity. You don't stray too far, but just say what in this could apply and how.
Yes. And this is a great invitation for, in our era, we have so many different professions. And, I was studying European law, work with the HR, language school, and now I'm doing, and you have in 25 years experience, in teaching, going into this, and, TEDx speaking. There's so many, we are
Mhm.
multifaceted. And sometimes we kind of want to make a line between, well, that was me before and this is me now, because it's going to confuse my audience if I speak about, my past life. Whereas what you're allowing here to do is that to really invite us to say, well, if when I was a teacher, or when I was, working in this, what was I doing, or how did I approach, what did I see? Like you said, it was not even you saw the kids creating the rules, and just reflecting and observing them and see what are they doing differently, and how much that could be useful, especially in corporate environments, and playfulness, the power of collaboration, the power of non-linear thinking. There's so much value in that. And I think that we can all, if you're watching, listening, just stop this for a second and just take a paper and pen and just brainstorm, because you've probably had 2 3 professions before you started this. Where our members, when they come to this, they have, most of them have been, either engineers or teachers, or they had another company before. We all have those multifaceted lives, so let's just make it something useful and that people can learn from it. Let's not throw that away, because this is one of your, you maybe spend 5 10 20 years doing something amazing, putting them together, and transforming that to the next industry. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. No, it's so you can see how you can pivot. That's the word. I mean, that's buzzword. But what you're really doing is taking one small thing and applying it somewhere else.
Yes.
It's useful because if you had value in some place, it has value other places.
Yes.
Um, and you've just got to find out what's the thing. I think too many authors who are trying to write a book or expand in a new industry are looking for something big. I need a really big idea. Like,
Mm.
I'm looking for something big. And I say, well, that's a misunderstanding. There are no big ideas. And people are like, what do you mean there are no big ideas? I go, well, Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week isn't a big idea. It's a small idea. What would happen if I could work not 40 hours a week in a cubicle, but 4 hours a week from anywhere I want in the world? That's a simple idea. It's not complex.
Yes.
But it becomes a big idea. That small, simple idea that you notice and other people kind of passed over becomes a big idea when more than one person talks about it. And that's why a book has so much leverage is I can talk about it and I can share it with somebody else and they can talk about it and they share it. Go, did you notice this? I never really thought about that, but that's so interesting.
Yes.
Big ideas are small ideas that lots of people talk about. And that's why a book's so useful, is that you can not even be present with people and they can talk about your book and share it with others and share it with others when you're not even there. And that's why a book can have life outside of itself. And books are more important to be talked about than they are to be read. And I know that's ironic, but your book's only valuable if people talk about it. It's not valuable if people just read it. It's not a textbook. Its job is to elicit action and conversation. That's when the book's really important. It's not meant to be a cookbook, a to-do book. It's meant to say, hey, I noticed you're really happier these days. Yeah, because I'm reading this book about how to be happy, healthy, and well by growing a garden to help ease your anxiety. Oh, that sounds interesting, right? That's when a
Yes.
book has value. So
Yes.
that's what you're trying to create, not creating a textbook on how to do X. You're creating an opportunity for the conversation to exist outside of you.
It's almost like a movement, right? You create a movement
Exactly.
around you. I'm thinking about the Miracle Morning, for instance, or which is became a whole concept of that 5 a.m. club. It's some almost like a routine that you are doing 5 a.m. club, and you might not even have read the book, but you speak about it, like you said, or the 5 second rule with Mel Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple concept, simple idea,
Exactly.
very
Exactly.
straightforward, but there is a whole idea around it. Yes, yes, it's so simple, but sometimes we just forget it. That's why we need to hear it from you sometimes
Right.
to kind of reconnect to that, because that's the thing. We are enough, we are good enough, we already have the stories in us. But this idea of writing a book feels sometimes a bit, we get into our imposter syndrome. I have to be this amazing expert, I'm going to put all my knowledge into it because look at how
Mm-hmm.
amazing I am, so no one makes me feel like I'm a fraud. There's the whole question of how you self-worth. And if you strip
Right.
down and you say, well, actually I am enough, just the fact that I've gone through this life in the way I've been doing this is enough to share. And there's going to be people inspired by that. Those are the most intelligent, inspiring, interesting books, because we can relate and we can
Yeah.
apply that to our life. So yes, the small stories.
Yeah. And realize, how Rudd's a friend. And that book, Miracle Morning, didn't start off selling a lot. He thought, I'll sell thousands. He didn't sell thousands. He sold very few.
Yeah.
But he built it intentionally. What if I create a community who have similar language and they have behaviors and they start to talk about this? He was very intentional about building that it would have a life of its own. And it did. It's taken years and years and years to do so, but it is a movement. And that's
Yes.
our publishing company, Mandala Tree Press's motto is make a movement with your message. Because isn't that what you're trying to do? Or are you trying to sell a book as a product for $9.99?
Yes.
I'd rather make a movement than make a product, because over the life of your own life or the life of others, it can live on and really help people and really change people's lives and maybe change your own. Hopefully you're the first person it changes, because once you get clear about your message and why you're unique, you start to show up different in the world. You start to have more confidence. You start to realize, I am pretty special. Yeah, you are. You're the only one that can write this book. No one else could. And if you don't, guess what? It drifts off in the universe and no one ever gets to hear that message. So
Yes.
I try to encourage people to think. And it probably comes from being a teacher. And my first published clients were 12-year-olds. I said, if 12-year-olds can publish books, then they don't have to ever worry about being an imposter. So when I saw these young people with books that they're writing and being published authors, I realized we need to be teaching this in school. One of your things you should leave my class with is everyone should be published, because it's way more valuable to walk into your first job and them to ask, hey, do you have job experience? And they say no, but here's a copy of my first book. I mean,
Yes.
you just walk through the door, like, come on in. If you wrote a book, you're probably a kind of person we want here. It does that for you as an adult
Yes.
too. Like, wow, I'm an author. You're an author? Uh-huh. It's even more valuable than being a TEDx speaker. I love that I have a TEDx and I love that it does a lot. But the book that I'm writing about my TEDx is actually more important to me, because that will live
Yeah.
on and on and on. They can take down my TEDx whenever they want, but that book I own and it starts to go in the hands of people, it will live on beyond me.
Yes, I do agree that writing a book changed my life, not in the way I expected to do. The actual journey of writing the book taught me that I have patience. I have stories. I have, I always thought that I wanted quick results and I just wanted, fast. I do something and it happens. And it taught me that I actually have patience in me, not because it was so long, but I wanted to take the time. I wanted
Mm.
to write it and I wanted to go back to it. And it allowed me to actually see who I was, my identity. And just writing that book allowed me to see that actually I have patience in me. I have those stories in me. I like writing, and the writing that came from, I didn't never thought I wanted to write, because like you, I don't like to really read books. I listen to them. I'm good
Yeah.
with audio. But and I said, well, I'm not a writer. I don't have it in me. And I start to write. And now every day I write 5 to 10 pages every
Mm.
day. And it doesn't even take me any, because I almost need to write.
Mm.
Before writing the book, I didn't even know I had the skills. And I realized, wow, it's in me. And I've been closing it down, but there's words coming through me. They just had to get out.
Yeah.
And it's so
That's so
funny.
great. That's what you're describing. I tell people I don't teach people how to write. They're like, "But you're a writing coach." I go, "I know. My job isn't to teach you. You already know how to write." They're like, "Well, what if I wasn't very good at school?" I said, "Well, look, I go to kindergarten classes that very first year of school, and I would take paper to these kids and give them markers or crayons or pens and say, okay, kids, we're going to write a story. And then go, oh, great. They'd grab their pen and they're ready to go. And I said, ready, set, go. And they'd write. They don't have any words. They don't have language yet. So they're scribbling, drawing pictures. And I'd say, time is up. And I'd say, okay, Marcus, what's your story about? And Marcus would say, well, this is a story about a bear who's going to look for his child. It's a little bee, and the bee gets lost and he gets stuck in a tree. I said, oh, really? And then what happens? Well, then the mom, who's an elephant, she gets stuck in the tree and the papa's looking for them. And it was just a beautiful story with no words. There's no words, scribbles. We are trained, we are writers by nature. We are storytellers. This is our humanity. We're meant to pass on things through our language. So you don't need to learn to write. What you need is the confidence to believe what you're saying. And you've gained the confidence because you did the work. And now you're like, I'm a writer. I'm an author. This is what I do. Yeah, that's what I try to spend all my time doing. You are an author. It's inside of you. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to hide. It being good or bad is not your choice. That's up to a reader. But it getting better can happen with time and editing. And those things happen in books. So what you discovered is something beautiful, which is what I hope to give the gift to my students is reminding them you've always been this writer. Always.
Yes, yes. And for the ones just having this conversation with you, I'm starting to feel like I feel like the second book is coming out of me, even without me, reflecting on that. And I guess I'm not the only one, because the way you're allowing us, taking away all the pressure of, editing, writing, it's about the story, it's about you, it's about your innate nature, it's about your unique way of being. You already have everything inside of you, and how proud and empowered and how much legacy can you create by just letting that stories be shared with others with just what you already have, right? So for the ones who are feeling like me and are just feeling that
Yeah.
coming through them, where can they continue? Where can they start this journey with you? Is there a way to enter and start trying and start going for, exploring that writer in us?
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear these stories. It's good to hear behind the scenes because oftentimes we just see authors who share their book done. Yeah, I'm a bestseller, and that seems great, but they don't talk about how hard it was or the struggle. So you can always go to Authors Who Lead podcast and listen to behind the scenes because I ask them deep questions about their book and the process. That's another great way you can get some continue on your journey. But we also offer these amazing camps. We have bookcamp.live, which is basically getting your book written planned out in 3 days. So most people are overwhelmed by a book process. It seems like so much to worry about. And so they never start because they just feel overwhelmed. Really, you've got to think about it in small little pieces, right? You don't
Mm.
think about running a marathon. How many steps is it? Well, it's 984,000 steps. Well, you don't that seems like a lot. Who wants to do that? 26 miles and 900,000 steps. But if you think about it as, it's just one step. But what are those one steps? So this book camp live is getting your book planned, publishing path decided, and your book marketing plan created in 3 days. So what normally takes people 3 months, you do it in 3 days, and you do it live with other people online. That's a great way because you're being held this really it's holding the space. No one wants to talk about the fear that it comes when you think about writing, the imposter syndrome as you described it. And then there's the thing called writer's block that people talk about. That comes up. So when you're sitting alone at your computer, these are all things you're feeling and you feel terrible because you're like, I should be able to do this, but I can't. Well, we deal with those right in real time. And we make you do exercises. We make you think about your uniqueness. We make you take action, make a decision about your book, pick your title, like really get confident. So that way you're like, I'm ready. My book's planned out. I'm ready to go. So that's one thing you can do is you can learn more about how to do that. Writing in community, writing with plan, with homework, because I am a teacher, keeping you accountable to get it done in 3 days that normally would take you 3 months. So that's another great way you can actually take action.
Wonderful. I'm going to share all the links below from this episode. So if you're watching or listening to this on YouTube or the podcast, you'll find that in the show notes. On Facebook, you'll be able to find that it's in the show notes as well. So you can check it out. It's actually happening as we're recording it. The next one is in May, 12th of May, right, Azul?
Correct. Yes,
Correct.
correct.
Amazing. Azul, this has been such a pleasure. I'm so grateful and for your generosity and all the time you took and the stories you shared. I know for sure for the ones who are tuning in that they're going to get so much value and get inspired. And I truly hope for the ones listening that you're taking action. That's the most important.
Yes.
As scary it might feel, but just taking that first action, either with the boot camp or listening to the podcast episodes or just taking some notes, sit down after this episode and just sit down and think, okay, what can I do right now? What's possible? Maybe doing the exercises, maybe just reflecting on what's that story that you have, your unique story. What's that niche? What is the one message, the small message? There's so many nuggets in this episode. So Azul, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Dara. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Is there some final word that you would like to add for the ones listening and watching?
My favorite quote is by Dr. Maya Angelou, who says, "There's no greater agony than an untold story inside of you." And anybody who's thinking about writing a book knows what it feels like to hold on to a story. I just encourage you to release it. You can do it.
Yes, you can do it. Release the story. And until next time, have a wonderful, wonderful time, wonderful day. And we believe in you. You have what it takes. So don't keep your gifts, your secret recipes, your stories for yourself because the world needs them. Until next time, have a wonderful